Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 9 of the LJL, officially unofficial podcast.
Mightiest episode.
And one of your three co-hosts of this podcast, I am Master Swan. Joining me, the man always in the middle, because that's why we do the screenshot. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 3.
I am doing
Episode 9.
It has been
officially
a
unofficial
hell of a few
podcast.
weeks where I just think seems to have decided that now, this month, right now, these last 2 weeks, everything must happen at once. All of it. I'm talking V3, I'm talking House, Masters, Finals, I'm talking C-Finals. There's a lot, mate. It's been really cool that now, this month, right now, these last 2 weeks, everything must happen at once. All of it. I'm talking V3.
Oh, apparently it's an echo. I'm actually not listening to what's happening. We've got double audio somewhere. Do we have that? Is that a thing?
Let me. All right. I think there was an extra audio thing I did have up here that I've just muted.
Good stuff. Good to get that sorted early.
Yeah.
That was only 10 seconds in, we're okay.
By the way, Nymera.
Hello.
How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm echoing in the background too. Yeah, kind of similar shit as Sam. It's like, wow, lots of stuff happening. Now, I've had that for like 2.5 months at this point. So, yeah, I'm feeling a bit of the drain. But we've had, for me, honestly, it's been actually a little bit of a more chill last week or so, actually. But yeah, I'm doing good. Went over to the LEC semifinals and saw that in the studio with Sam and with Trouble and Goldborg as well. So that was really cool. That was really, really cool. Hell, there were even some people that knew who I.
Right?
Yeah, it was the semis. Finals, they didn't have any. They couldn't have any tickets put aside for it because it was like that much demand, which is more than fine. But yeah, no, I mean, hell, some people even knew who I was, which was strange.
You're famous.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not gonna get that. I'm not gonna quite say that yet, but like a couple of like, hey, you were very funny as a mailman. I'm like, fuck yeah, I was. You're right. So it was really cool. And yeah, so that's kind of stuff which happened outside of LJL, and then also LJL happened, and that was fucking cool.
Oh yeah.
LJL has been happening. It's been a few weeks since we've done a podcast. Life and stuff has happened to the three of us.
Seriously?
That's why we have not been here, and we're kind of doing this, I would say, gentlemen, slightly more on a whim, weirdly enough. We haven't done them because we've been busy, and now
Well, that's busy, vaguely, for once.
Well, I think less busy is a momentary breather.
Yeah, it's a blip. I've got my head above water briefly.
Yeah, so we're like, let's do a podcast. That's how we've kind of fallen in before we dive back down, probably the three of us. With that said, though, gentlemen, LJL has been happening.
Yes, it has.
We've got to do one thing before we really do get into the weeds of just everything we need to uncover. And that is, if you like this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, hit that like button, subscribe, get the notification bell going.
It likes it. It's okay.
Are over on Apple Podcasts, I want to see 5 stars. If you're on Spotify, give us a thumbs up. Apparently, that really helps the algorithm if you on Spotify give a thumbs up.
Wait, doesn't Spotify have the video version of the podcast too now?
It does now, yeah.
That's very cool.
Just saying.
That's cool.
Look.
So
if you're an LJL fan, you know the power of the thumbs up. Follow in Ebby's footsteps.
Thumbs up.
Give us the thumbs up, right like this. Boom.
Yeah, it's the one.
But with that said, and shilling aside, gentlemen, it's been several weeks since we've done a podcast episode, and the last one we did was myself and Initialize with Caster Oak, and that was recapping Super Week, basically, with, I think, day 20 and day 21, which, in the grand scale of things, weren't going to have a huge amount of effects. They ended up having a bit of effects, but everything kind of panned out how we basically predicted everything would work out. We've had every round of playoffs now. Playoffs are done and dusted, ladies and gentlemen. If you've only listened to the podcast, and if you're someone that does that, thank you. Well, that means a bit to us. Thank you for.
Means quite a lot
if this
to
is
us,
the only way you consume the LJL. Hello, say hello to us. We'd love to hear from you. There's a lot to uncover.
Yes.
But in the grand scale of things, only one team is representing the LJL at MSI, and some of these other teams kind of we lost them rather early on. So let's say our very brief thank yous, I feel is the correct term to use, to the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming and Crest Gaming Act, who, well, they dropped out in the first round, didn't they, gentlemen?
They did. They lived and died as only detonation, as only a CGA can really. They were sat up. I was just like, I don't know that this team has had some really fun moments this split, but you know they had a really hard draw. CGA are a very inconsistent team. They're probably against the most consistent team outside of DFM in the league in the first round, and it was a pretty rough draw for them.
Nishilash, what about you thinking? CGA. They lost 0-3.
They lost. I'd like to say more about that statement, but I honestly I think they were just a little bit figured out. Honestly, into playoffs, we kind of saw that. You know, again, we know this team has strengths. If you can get Hybrid online, he's pretty great.
If he doesn't get ganked in the first 10 minutes, though,
exactly that. We know that Nap is a very consistent player, but Nemo and Cassin are quite volatile, for better or worse. And if they don't hit, particularly when you need them to be your playmaking engage options, it makes the rest of the map's life quite difficult. And that really did show in playoffs when some of those tendencies get really, really punished when people get the chance to hone strategies against you.
I mean, Nemo was also another player that I thought would step up a bit more coming into playoffs. Didn't really find his groove. Didn't play a Thresh, which I was a little disappointed because, I mean, his Thresh was what really made him and Honey stand out in playoffs a little bit for me.
It was a different meta, but...
Oh, it was. But
so, I mean, I think the problem with CGA is that if you want to get Nemo on Thresh and on champions that I feel he is more comfortable on, you have to play towards outrange and to let the enemy come into you because they don't want to just sit in this middle ground where you're being outranged. And like they were playing stuff like the Rise isn't bad, but you're never going to outrange like stuff like, I mean, so you look at all games and they're effectively, they're outranged by Xayah plus random control mid every single game. And they're like, haha, we will engage into you. And that's just not what, I mean, Nemo's not bad at that, but they had very disjointed drafts. And I mean, Rascal Jester were a better team with a better read on the meta. So it was pretty put to bed.
Yep. Nothing that was really particularly excited. And yeah. I know looked really good against Nap was kind of one of the bigger takeaways.
Yeah,
yes, that's the big one actually. Thinking about it, yeah. I know has had a we'll talk about it in like overall, but like I know's been looking pretty good, you know.
He has. The former rookie top laner though of Rascal Jesters was playing on the other side of the bracket. That is Kinatsu. He plays for the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks, and well, Ray Farkey had a good time with Kinatsu in that series. And honestly, the question is Dasha actually an elo hell anymore, or is this his own personal hell? Because I like to think of it like every version of the Hawks now is just his own personal.
Hang on. So he signed a deal somewhere on the line with Unsold Stuff Gaming, and he basically said for the low price of your soul forever, you will remain with whoever owns this slot. And he came in and was much like the violinist who gave their soul to the devil down in Georgia, realized that yes, I can be the best mechanical mid in the league, but only for 1 year. And then the lights of Ari and Dana. And then you're stuck in this your Hawks team that's just not quite all together. Then you get Tussle as he's falling off hard, and then Blank who struggles to synergize. And memes aside, Dash was clearly a good mid laner still. Like he's got hands, you can see it, but this team just does not look coordinated. It's been improving, yes, but it's been so much slower than every other team in the league.
Yeah,
and it hurt in playoffs.
I do feel, though, to look good as a mid laner outside of exceptional circumstances, and there is one of those, obviously, in the LJL, looking good as a mid laner on your own pretty much doesn't happen to the same level as, say, I don't know, say an AD carry, maybe. They can kind of just plug and play a lot of different cases. But you look at the way that particularly, I think Blank and Reiner really struggled to communicate this split. And overall, more than this, where it really came to a head, right, was, I mean, in this series, right, The Hawks should never have gone towards Baron. It was awful for them. They threw like almost. Very rarely do you see a series which is like
Unreal.
every game is determined by a Baron throw. You get like one of them, and then the team gets cowed.
Wasn't our MVP Baron?
MVP
Yeah, it
was Baron Nashor. Yes.
Yeah, because it gave Burning Core 2 of the Barons. It was.
And I'm fairly sure that actually in the game which Burning Core lost as well, it was also a bit of a Baron thing going on.
It was that whole series was dictated by Baron fights for no reason, and
it was
hilarious.
It was hilarious. It got to the point where it's like the typical part of Deliria where you're kind of sat there like, wow, I don't know how to react to this. I'm going to scream into the void. So that was my impression.
But the best part is that this series, while they played around Barons so much, it ended up not being the series that had the most Barons. We'll talk about that later. But
yeah. I mean, I feel bad for the Hawks. They never really came online. It's a sad situation. Burning Core advanced from the first round of playoffs for the first time in the Hawks history. That's really, really cool for them. They deserved it. And I think particularly, Flawless and Dice had a really, really good series outside of Rayfarki as well. I mean, honestly, it was an ensemble performance, but yeah.
I do want to harken back just to something that Sam said at the very top of Hawks, where it's like, you kind of alluded, Sam, to the fact that Hawks could be a summer team. Because it took them so long to actually start coordinating. There is a chance come summer with a triple round robin, maybe they start looking good. Because by the end of that triple round robin, they started to look a little bit more on top. Maybe another 3 months, but at that point, it's like DFM showed that they could get the pieces together in half a split, if not even that, really. So it's like, how much more time do we need to give the Hawks?
And well, I think that the other issue I've got, right, is like, okay, you've come online, well done. But then you are trying to match sort of mechanical weight with Jet, with Dice, with Recap, with
Honey.
you Honey, Sol, Utapon. Like,
Right? Yeah.
And yes, Hawks are really good. Or players exactly, but if you're already a little bit behind in terms of synergy, and we're already seeing some flaws in terms of your flexibility as a team, and we're already seeing that actually there are players out here who can match or exceed your mechanical strengths, then like I struggle to see this team getting better than 4th.
So yeah, I agree with that kind of benchmark. I think that they will struggle to get that right now, because there is a very obvious difference in philosophies of how different team members want to play, and we're inferring that, right? But you look at so this is something that actually, honestly, Temporal kind of spotted this quite early on, where you have different views on the game, and it looked like Blank was going for the right move, and then the rest of the team would just like walk the other way, and there's like, shit, I gotta walk with them because I got to, right? Not only are they viewing the game differently, but they're not reacting very quickly when that is happening, and that leads to sometimes the Hawks not fully committing to something that they are doing, over committing when they are, and it's just very disjointed. So there's a lot which needs to be fixed, and if they do manage to fix that, we might see explosive growth from them. I'm not expecting too much at this point, though.
No,
especially with the level of the other teams that we saw. I think the Hawks, viewing the whole playoffs as a whole,
and certain players' pools for me are also coming into question. There's a lot of like question marks where it's like, maybe with time they can fix this. But
I mean, not to dwell too much longer on this point, but like as a comparison point, look at say the 2 of the best teams in the world. If you saw the top esports win reverse sweep earlier today, which is incredible stuff, or you watch T1 beat Gen.G, there are times when those teams are in bad positions where they've made the wrong call, and then the snap decision to get out or find a play find the play to turn it around, like, okay, we got to go now. That happens so damn quickly and so damn in such coordination that they can get their way out of difficult situations. Because that will happen against better teams, right? They're gonna like match you or outthink you occasionally. That's just part and parcel of the way the game is now. Hawks don't do that.
No, and to use that, they can't even get late game and like be a closer. They can't be a team like Team Liquid, where if they hit 40 minutes. Team Liquid will almost always close that game out with a victory, regardless of how they got there. That's kind of their whole MO. Another team in the LJL showed to be similar to that. Hawks don't really have any of that yet. So, but then remember their record at the end of the season wasn't great. So yeah,
I think the last round robin, they kind of plateaued again a little bit. But yeah, no. So this is a team which we've given them a lot of time now. There's a lot of games to cover, but this one is like, God damn it, they should have done better than this, and they didn't.
But they still took a game, so that's more than what Chris Gaming Act can say. So yeah.
I didn't expect Burning Core to do much in this playoffs, so I think taking a game off them, I was like, okay, sure, whatever. But they really smashed them when they showed the openings.
Let's go ahead and stay with our lower bracket teams, because I think that makes sense from what we've just been talking about. Rascal Jester faced off against Burning Core in an actual kind of banger of a series.
It was really fun.
Well, considering that we set it up to be, well, whoever wins this series out of Hawks and Burning Core, congratulations to Rascal Jester on their 3-0 win. That wasn't the case.
No. I am pleasantly surprised by how good this Burning Core team has been. And again, there's a little bit of the old school Burning Core thing. And I think they're probably higher ceiling than we've seen in a couple years, actually, honestly, at least from what we've seen. But there's still the same issues, like where they've got really good strengths and really obvious weaknesses, and whether they could stab and murder their opponent before they get stabbed in their horrific, glaring weakness, their like enemy boss style with the big painted target on it, video game style, comes out ahead. And, actually we saw the likes of, Flawless, Dice, Rayfarki have some really good moments. Yuhi was pretty okay actually for parts of this as well. But
I'd agree.
Again, it still wasn't quite enough, unfortunately. And you could kind of see some of the necessities for Flawless to like be really hard carrying alongside his top side. And if that didn't happen, or for whatever reason they had bad games, they kind of fell apart a bit. And Rascal Jesters were just a step too far, even if it was a valiant effort, all things said and done.
Yeah, I think particularly for me, Dice had a hell of a series, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
That Cassidy was so close. That Yone was so
one
close.
thing. I think the Yone, I look at them like, holy, people don't
got
play
real
the
close.
champion, but they got really close to taking another game off Rascal Jester. And
I was getting some Megumin vibes from Axis with that miracle run where occasionally he would just randomly look good, but Dice is always good. So it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, I think that honestly, I feel like the player which I wanted to step up more and didn't was Rayfarki, sadly.
Unfortunately so.
I think that Ino had a pretty solid set of games. Bot lane,
Every
besides
single
game
I
one,
would say Ino, really.
besides game one, Stolen Secret kind of put Yuhi and
that's
Fujimoto into a bit of the dumpster. But yeah, I feel like considering where I benchmarked Burning Core, they were very much punching up above my benchmarked level for them, and they can be proud of that, and we'll see them in summer.
Yeah.
Good series to go watch.
Good flexibility.
Yeah, I think my favorite game out of that one was actually probably the final game, which was that one with the Cassidin, because it felt so close at so many angles. Flawless played an absolute fantastic Lee Sin that game as well.
He tried. He really did. It was the lethality Lee Sin. It's like, I am this close to
playing Prowler's Claw. Hell yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So
and honestly, it made a lot of sense.
Watch that one, ladies and gentlemen. I highly recommend that one. I think it gets all of us. But gentlemen,
yes,
let's talk about Sengoku Gaming and DFM. And I just want to also preface this to our listeners and viewers out there. We're kind of rattling through the series because there's two teams that we really want to talk about a lot. Well, actually, three teams we want to talk about a lot, realistically. Sengoku, Rascal Jester, and DetonatioN FocusMe. We wanted to give time to the other teams that we're not going to be talking a lot about. That's why we've done this and we've rattled through them. Because DetonatioN FocusMe versus Sengoku Gaming in the Juggernaut match was maybe, outside of Rascal Jester Chris Gaming Act, probably the second most one-sided affair, really, in a series. And that kind of set a very interesting stage for the rest of playoffs. Because remember, this was our third best of three. We've kind of done it a little bit in this out of order here.
Yeah,
best of five. Thank you. Yeah,
it highlighted some flaws for this team because, or at least at the time it did. Basically, because Jet didn't get into this series. Like this was a series where he was very quiet, and then DFM ran over bot lane. Honey did not get to play this series the entire damn time. Like he was absolutely murdered. And with Jet being quiet and Honey murdered, Sengoku had felt like no options. And that was about all to write home about. DFM were very good, and they absolutely silenced everything Sengoku wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big thing was that so what was shown in this series right from the off, I mean, in games 1 and 2, it's particularly obvious, was DFM would draft like to give themselves an ability to just pile on bot lane, isolate top lane in a 1v1, and Ebi would just play a DFM'S. So you had Honey with like 4 members of weight crushing down on him, and then Ebi just like removing Paz from the table. So you had a 1v1, which was never working out for you. Even with stuff like the Nara into Graves or whatever, it really just felt like Paz was not a factor. And DFM played around bot side really, really well. I think that where things started to change was Sengoku drafted comps that could
It was
for
the
me it was
game
the
3,
Samira
right?
actually. The Samira was the big thing.
Yeah. Honey's
It,
Samira,
it,
yeah.
it was a fun Samira pick.
Yeah, whereas like, okay, first couple of games with like, I mean, when you're playing Ezreal into Aphelios, Aphelios is just like, I can't really do anything early. It's kind of crap. And then you've got the Misfortune Zillion into Zyra.
Oh,
I was like,
no, sorry,
I
I've got to chime in.
Mhm.
Honey's Jinx was open.
Yeah. So the
It was a
problem
very
with
hard game to
some,
play Jinx.
so
And still true, but
No,
Honey
and I
Jinx.
think that we saw later on that Honey's Jinx was very much a factor in some games which came afterwards, which we may
Indeed.
talk about very, very shortly. But yeah, I think that if you are playing, if you are a very good Aphelios team, I think there are points where Aphelios can outvalue Jinx. At the 1 item mark and just before that, like everywhere from like level 6 to the 1 item mark, Aphelios has such a big point power. Like once you hit 2 items, Jinx has more value. But I feel like against a team which is as good in the early game as DFM for the region, I think that the Aphelios does have some value. But
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll also add in, this was Yaharon got the LeBlanc this time, and Jet was on the Ari, and actually Yaharon handled Jet pretty well this time. The Ari didn't get a lot done.
True.
And then
that's
on
not
top
true.
of that,
He solo killed Yahrong in lane.
like once, and then fell and just barely did anything out of it. He went 1 and 3. He didn't get a lot done that game. But on the other side, all the while you had Udapon and Harp for double kill first blood bot side solo in that bot lane at like level 1 or 2. Like that was not what I was expecting out of Honey and NT. Like you can't have that happen bluntly, and it really fell apart. And that happened honestly relatively consistently actually across the matches that we happened. Was like the early levels like 1, 2, 3. Udapon and Harp were ruthless in close, both this and the finals. Actually, it was quite interesting to see, which is not something we'd historically seen a lot out of Udapon in lane per se, because obviously Gang was generally a little bit more reserved, more of a roamer. And that was
the one time we saw that was literally in the finals versus Sengoku. Remember in the Juggernaut match where Sengoku beat DFM, and it's like actually a lot of that was bot lane not doing that great. Actually, Udapon and Gang were getting a little bit dealt with by Uturmiyashi. And NT actually as well. But then you go into the finals, and suddenly it's like, oh heck, they're dying all the time. Udapon and Gang are here.
Well, I honestly, if a player from Sengoku I'd want to highlight that I really was disappointed with throughout this whole series, and kind of it felt like they were champion reliant, and Detonation FocusMe like pinned them down like from second one, B1 draft, I believe it was, with the Tom Kench. And it felt like NT kind of felt like a bit nullified. Well, not fully, but just didn't have the same impact that he was having on this Tom Kench.
So actually, I've got a really good point for that for the finals, so I'm going to save that then.
All right,
I agree.
put a pin in it.
The Tom Kench was really important for Sengoku. We'll bring that back. We'll bring that back for the finals, because there's a really important point about this, and it's about how Kazu drafts.
But it was a 3-0 at the end of the day.
Well, the game 3 was better for
very
Sengoku.
quick.
They actually got, like, Honey started to do some stuff, and then it was like, oh shit, Yoharong is 9-1 and 14 at the end of the game, and he just deletes the Samira. But yeah, no, it was like, they started to evolve at that point, and I think actually that was again, put a pin in what they started to do in game 3 when we talk about Sengoku later.
Yeah. Also, Ebi was a very big Renekton, so Honey was always going to struggle in that game. Bless him. But because of that loss, Sengoku Gaming went to the lower bracket. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, the LJL and now the NLC has the best playoff system.
Yay!
We have the best playoff system in the mine region. Actually, there is another region that does the same system as us. I was talking to J Real, one of our other hosts.
Pretty sure that PCS did it last year. Like, it's becoming more widely accepted. LEC has kind of got an extra bit of obscureness added onto it, because the way you drop out from the upper bracket is weird. And they have like a single match in the lower bracket and then 2 upper bracket matches, so 2 teams drop down.
Wait, have we died?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Just our ping died a bit.
I thought I saw this go down to. This is going down to 0 kilobytes.
Yeah. Are we here? Dun dun dun.
I believe so, but
I mean, I look
we
like I'm
here?
confused and on the stream, and it looks like it's working. So
We're okay. We're here. We're alive. Phew. Good. Moment of panic. It's over.
I'm not gonna question that anyway. Because of that loss, though, Sengoku lower bracket, Rascal Jester 2-0 at the moment. They were also, remember, we were all expecting Rascal Jester to actually play against Sengoku, play against Detonation FocusMe in that Juggernaut match until obviously they lost their second tiebreaker match, and that's where me, Initialize, and Oak were all like, well, it's gonna be like this now. Hey ho, probably should have been Rascal Jester, but they lost the head-to-head, so oopsie daisy. We got to have
Yes.
the full 5-game series, and I'll be honest, this is probably my favorite best of 5 from LJL ever.
There are a couple which there are some games which I think outpace this one. The individual ones which I think like, so for instance, I think of Game 5 V3 DFM Summer 2020. That one was insane.
That was fun.
I think in terms of series that get close, I think of actually the second best of 5 we ever cast on here with the CGA Rascal Jester one spring 2020 first round. That was like Aria versus Art craziness. But in terms of like
Rascal Jester Mad Scientist drafting as well, that was.
But that it was, yeah. And then I think over the course of all 5 games, this is the most edge of my seat I have been in like almost any series.
My voice was nearly dead after casting this.
Yeah, and the fact that we had you two casting that as well, like we couldn't have set it up more.
We had everything. We had the max hype. We had me going delirious as I sometimes.
Yeah, the Delirious Horizon.
Yep.
Yeah,
there we go, Delirium Horizon. Thing is, though, the fun thing about that is that. So I got a quick aside. I'm a big Binding of Isaac player, and like one of the harder bosses in the game is called Delirium. So I've spent many a time uttering that word in quite angered tones.
Weirdly enough, I remember watching Binding of Isaac races way back in like.
Oh, is that the Balls of Steel tournament? Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, I think it was. Oh, that was a random aside. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go and watch a good series, go watch Sengoku versus Rascal Jester. Absolute banger of a series. You do have to be a little bit invested into the LJL, or you might look at it a bit critically and go, well, this isn't fantastic League of Legends. No, it wasn't perfect, phenomenal League of Legends every moment, but it was fun. And I think that's what I would actually want to really emphasize. This was 2 teams which you could tell wanted it and were trying every single second to find an edge over their opponent.
Regards to that, because in terms of like the level of play, is this bad, blah, blah, blah. I think midway through game 2, I think I said this on cast, I really want to reiterate it here as well. I think that given the drafts they had, I think the players were playing pretty fucking well, actually. Now, there are some questions about early game. I think that as a whole, LJL, I've continually been quite critical about how little we achieved before Herald. I think that Herald is the point where if we're going to do something, we do it.
Our first 5 minutes are like...
I mean, I think that we saw a little bit more of that in the finals. But in game 2, like you look at 2 teams who have drafted a small amount of pick CC. You've got like a Rakan on one side, which can do some stuff, but Rakan's soul engage is not actually that great, especially into lots of range and lots of disengage. And on the other side, your engage is the Hecarim, and Hecarim doesn't have a dive buddy. So you have like the package in Hecarim, which can occasionally come up, but both the teams were playing very disengage heavy. They were playing with range, and they were basically saying who can get the best picks first. And both teams were actually very good at paying each other respect and trying to play close to the limit in terms of the amount of damage they could take and put dish out at the same time. It did mean it went late. It went to like basically 50 minutes, but I feel like it was both teams understanding that both teams didn't have a great way to get on top of each other and nullifying each other. I think that the players played well with the tools they had. It's just, it's a boring draft.
Yeah, and there was a little bit. This felt like a series with a little bit of an internal meta. I wonder whether these guys were scrim partners, honestly, because obviously there's some weird system where honestly, like obviously DFM and Sengoku are unlikely to be scrimming because they were playing each other. So who else do you then book scrim? Who do you book scrims with then? Probably Rascal Jester, honestly, if you think about it.
Even though they're likely to meet at some point, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. Because at which point you effectively have this weird internal scrim and there's probably turning up a little on stage where you can sort of see like, I know what they want. They want X, Y, Z. Yeah. Well, we'll have to do this to counter that. And you end up with some slightly odd drafts, which partly to do with comfort, partly to do with what the enemy team's going to do, and partly with knowing what they want to do as well, right? Like,
Yes, and this is a
One-
series
one
where
of
we
say-
actually saw
yeah.
the draft adaptation, right,
Yes, very
throughout
much
the
so.
whole series. Like, to
Hugely so.
really emphasize your point, like, we could tell that there was little things going on here, and, like, it was so obvious. Like, we even brought it up on Desk, and you guys brought it up on Cast. Like, it's like, we are seeing things here that are not normal for us or these two teams, but there's clearly a method to the madness, I think, is a
No,
good
very much
phrase
so.
to
And like,
use.
I almost want to go back and watch that series again just to listen to what I was thinking at the time, because a lot of it slipped out of my mind now. But I seem to remember a lot of thoughts about how, Rascal Jester were first picking Jinx for most of the series, and then it was Sengoku finding some ways to deal with that. I think that one of them was
Yeah.
basically saying, look, you're going to have to dive into us either way. We're going to pick up the FLAO's Tom Kench, and that's, of course, NT's Tom Kench, which we had some thoughts about. This is actually a slight caveat, because this wasn't the point I was going to make later in terms of how Sengoku look with the Tom Kench and how they look without it. But in this series, you could see that how the rest of the draft really started to revolve around, does Honey have peel? And what do you give up
Yes.
for that peel? So Honey having peel from the Tom Kench is one way to do things, but that means you don't have Leona, you don't have a Nautilus to be very reliable, early engage, which can allow you to play around certain different kind of phases of play in terms of, does the God hook land and you just like win a team fight off of that? And that meant that it came down to like huge things about aggressive positioning from various people like Jet, Honey, Recap, and Sol, right? And that was it was a series to watch. It was really interesting to see what happened when your support player, who has often been the big engaged threat, doesn't have that for a team.
I mean, what were your predictions going into this series, lads?
I think mine was
I had 3-1 Sengoku.
Sengoku, yeah.
I think we all were Sengoku believers. But that was also a contrast to a lot of our staff, if I remember rightly.
And
Well,
actually,
so
I didn't think it would
we-
happen in this way either. So.
No, not at all.
No,
Like,
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, because
Like,
actually this
I
was
might have arrived
incredibly
at
close.
somewhat of the right answer, not the right logic.
But not the right logic. Exactly, because I think both my analysis tape, we had this conversation probably the night before, actually, when we were saying, look, we thought that Rascal Jesters were the better overall team. Rascal Jesters were, in general, a bit more versatile, had a lot more going for them. There's a lot of experience going on there. This team's been together for a while. Sol and Secret are just phenomenal, etc., etc., etc. But Sengoku have a really good matchup into Rascal Jesters, with what we were saying. So actually, just on that specific matchup, Sengoku were better because they match up well into Rascal Jesters. Not that they are the better team on average. That didn't play out that way because I think Sengoku, especially considering how manhandled they were in the Juggernaut match, turned up and really put the screws on. And Rascal Jesters also, were still a really good team, and I think that made this series incredibly exciting.
And actually, what really excites me about this series, and this is something which, okay, so again, like for those of you who are kind of tuning into this and kind of thinking about, what about the LJL as a region? A lot of you will be here kind of like to talk about DFM and what's happening in MSI. Are we going to talk about that? We'll talk about that in a bit and whatever, right? But I think one thing that we were very critical of as a whole region is kind of the coaching staff of a lot of our teams were not really that great at adapting. We weren't that great at adapting to the meta. We had some teams that would just like rely on individual players' champion pools to do stuff. I think that in this series, Arya definitely up there, like Nap's random team fights, like all of this stuff, right? Dasher, stuff like that. I mean, we have some players who just like
game,
all of that stuff, right? So I look at this series and I see the adaptation from Sengoku between Juggernaut match to here, and I look at Rascal Jester coming in with a strong plan, thinking their way through things, and actually Game 5, we'll have to talk about that in individual stuff, right? We'll get onto that after. Like, I see real intelligence in our teams and the way that they're going about stuff. And for me, that's really, it emboldens my feelings about this region that we're no longer actually just a one-team region. Yes, DFM is kind of above these other two teams, but I look at Rascal Jester and Sengoku, I'm like, these are good teams. I can see how they win. There's some problems for me in the early game. Like I said, the early game is the real kind of point. I'm like, but this as a region, we need to sort this out. But in terms of the intelligence about how we go about drafting, how we go adapting in a adaptation in a best of 5, there's some really interesting teams here in the LJL currently.
And this is something where I was bringing this up on the desk in the green room. I don't actually think I said this on broadcast, but this is something I very much would openly say anyway. You two would know this. This is fantastic that we have two other teams competing. I still don't want them to go to MSI. I want DFM to go to MSI. And I was always saying this because at the end of the day, we need to play long game with the LJL as a region here, especially if we're starting to peak a little bit. Let's think long term. Let's try and become an emerging region. This was something that started coming up in the Reddit thread after our finals and everything. And it's because we need DFM to keep winning. So eventually we can have a second seed. And that's when we can actually
how
start
do you
going.
move up the rankings to be the next VCS or PCS, right? Like, that's the idea. How do you become a 2-team region?
Well, there is
Because
no
that would
roadmap
be
for that, which is
No.
kind of But anyway, it would be huge for us as a region if we could do that. It'd be huge.
And that's why seeing Sengoku and Rascal Jester this series being such a banger. And then the fact is, like, game one, you just need to go watch game one, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I seriously, we could gush about all these games. And I mean, maybe one day we might do a podcast in between now and MSI where we actually do a complete gush on it. Who knows? Maybe we will. We'll have time. We've got a few weeks.
Maybe we'll do
till
something on the
MSI.
channel and we'll do like a chill rewatch of a series. We could do that.
Oh, that'd be cool, actually. That'd be some
good
content I'd be
idea.
up
There we
for. Let us know if you'd like to see that. But I mean, game one had the 4 Barons, which half killed you both on broadcast.
Oh god, yeah, 4 Barons.
How was that, lads? How was that initialized more so?
Well, my voice survived, but it was like so many of these games came down to ridiculous late game scenarios. Yeah, like I think there is something has gone wrong when you've got 4 Barons and have not managed to close.
Yes.
Let's leave it at that. Like there was some stuff that didn't quite go to plan.
And it was all one team that got that Baron as well.
Right?
Rascal Jester were the benefactors of that.
And that was with a Baron Steel involved as well.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh
Yeah,
god,
it
I
was.
forgot.
It
Oh,
was.
they leashed one.
Yep, that was pretty crazy. Yeah, God, I'm trying to remember. Wait, oh no, hang on, wait. Wasn't it it was a Tom Kench Q steal? Tom Kench
That's
Q over
right.
the
It was the
wall.
tongue lash. Yes.
So it's hilarious how that is an incredible moment which might have defined your highlight montage reels for any other region. And that's just one part of this first game for us here, I guess.
Yeah.
It didn't even make it onto the best moments out because the DFM Sengoku series got the best moment, which was the Yaharong Twisted Fate plays, which we'll get onto later.
They were so good, actually.
That's
just okay, but like if we can have just like one last stop off in this series,
we need to.
The last game was effectively saying it was Rascal Jester struggling in games 3 and 4 to shut down Honey and Jets. And I look at Honey and I'm like, holy crap, this guy's Moonlight Vigils on Ophelos have been game changing. This is absurd. And then like you look over to this last game and we have a Smite top Bard. It's not even that. It's also Ino and Secret changing roles. So Secret can play the Bard because it's a specialty champion of his, and Ino can play like Leona because it's slightly easier to play. He
also does play that in solo queue.
And like Rascal Jesters have this whole composition to be like, we're going to clear through bot side with double smite and dive you while you're still level 1, so Honey can never get any resources. But Sengoku just kind of like a step ahead of them.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Honestly, like I've got to give serious credit to Once and Jet that game for basically being spot on with their roam timings to come and punish that multiple times in a row, especially after the forced split map came through, where effectively Paz was on Renekton. He's the one getting solo XP and stuff. It's like, well, actually, how much value is this Renekton going to get from that gold, especially if they can pull off this dive? But Once and Jet turn up, but they get a load of kills over. Yes, Honey still ends up ceding a lot of weight. He's put behind a bit, but they still punish really hard. And Jet goes 11-1 in this game. Once goes 7-2-9 on his Lee Sin. Like his Lee Sin is really famous in the LJL and beyond. Like they got things rolling, and it was an unusual play pattern and one that was clearly designed to be a curveball. But Sengoku's on the fly decision making and reactive problem solving was really astute, and they managed to keep their AD carry in the game. They managed to actually get a sizable gold leader, but I mean, Rascal Jester somehow, some way managed to get back into it a little bit because Sol is really fucking good and still got a lot of resources. But it was a very smart early game, at least from Sengoku.
prevented them from really snowballing any lead. And Sengoku, I mean, it felt like they struggled a little bit to figure out how they wanted to close the game, even though they had like a 10k gold lead. But
Yes.
that was more.
Yeah.
I could definitely tell they were like, we have this game. And they were more so making sure, let's not flub it at this moment. This is critical that we don't mess this up at this moment in time. And let's do it cleanly. And it took them 5 more minutes than it should have. They should have ended at before 30, really. It took them 35 minutes,
Yeah.
but they did it. Or 34
I think
minutes.
that, I mean, Rascal Jester played out like their huge CC into big
They
ultimate
did.
combo pretty well, and Sol got a hell of a lot of gold. I mean, to me, like, the overall takeaway from this game, kind of after this series, was I thought Rascal Jesters were probably going to be the better coherent team in this series. I think that Sengoku showed a real level of intelligence to step up, meet them, and surpass them, actually, in this series. And then, actually, a lot of those hallmarks showed themselves again in the finals.
Oh boy, they did. So I casted this finals, which was the first time for me.
You did.
And actually, no. Let's shout this out
job, my
quickly,
dude.
because we've now been doing this for what, 2.5 years? We have finished our 5th split. And,
this is our 5th split, yeah.
Yeah, and until this point, Sam and I have done a lot of the finals, but it's not just us two. Lexusov's been a driving force, honestly, the driving force, actually, for a lot of moments for a lot of this time. And you pushed yourself forward for that finals, and we very much agree to that, and you fucking smashed it. And this was a series which allowed you to smash it too. So it really delivered, and it was a very satisfying moment for Sam and I watching that. So congrats on that.
We also had you both on the desk as well. We
that was a good desk. It's very, very cool. Very cool desk.
Very good desk. Stacked desk. Jay Real, one of our hosts that kind of came up through the ranks of this this split. There we go. And we had Joshi return back to us. He did plan to be with us for semis, but prior arrangements meant that going between his house and where he was at 2 a.m. was not going to be safe. And we all agreed with him. So we thought finals would be a better spot. But Jesus. I mean, let's be real here, gentlemen. Let's start this out on, I think, the correct page. Predictions. Everybody but myself had 3-0 predictions, and I want to come over to you guys why it was going to be such a decisive 3-0. Oh, by the way, DFM winning 3-0. I should have
sorry to clarify. I think we'd seen how well DFM had done in the Juggernaut match, and it had been really, really good with a lot of different styles and a lot of different players looking very good in different games. Yaharong had stepped up in that 3rd game. Utapon had crushed. Ebby had, pulled out some counter picks and looked really good on it. All of that stuff, right? And then we kind of saw that series in the lower the sort of the lower bracket, the semifinals, and it was a close series. It was a bit scrappy. There was some mistakes. It was a great series, but like we saw it was like, okay, actually they've given up a lot more info again potentially, and if they, it was a close series, so actually can they do that again against DFM? I just don't know about it. And like with those kind of two things in mind, we thought, well, DFM should just have this, right? They're the level above. And honestly, Sengoku like raised their level. My days, they did a fantastic job.
So to kind of bring back what we were talking about a little bit in the Juggernaut match, I think that in games 1 and 2, DFM very much had the blueprint for success versus Sengoku, where you pile all your resources bot side, you give them a draft where they can't deal with that, and you also draft towards a 1v1 top matchup where Ebby just removes Paz from being relevant. And what we saw in the finals was actually there were some points where they would break open because DFM tried to play aggressive early, but they were doing it with a Hecarim. You can't fight at level 3. Not really, anyway. You either power farm through to level 4 and you have like 2 points in your Q and then you level up your E at level 4, or you go to kind of like a bit of a you kind of take a bit of a dip in power to say maybe I can impact something with my charge ability, and then we'll see what can happen after that. But the real breaking point was the fact that Jet was just manhandling lane, and DFM, I don't think in the last 2 years they haven't had a time where they have been this contended in the laning phase. Both in bot side, I think that was not as much as I think in bot side, that's one thing. I think that was, I mean, you look at the Juggernaut match and like, okay, well, whatever, like, I still think that, I think that Utapon and Harp on the whole was still winning lane there. But Jet was absolutely monstering mid lane. He was getting good wave manipulation to roam down to early level 3, level 4 plays. And this really fucked with DFM. And they would commit to early plays, and they would actually get punished for it.
I'm willing to say the last time I think DFM actually got pushed laning was all the way back with Seros still.
Yeah, I agree.
And it would be back in 2020 spring, that Sengoku series we talk about a lot. Because other than that, when they lost to V3, that was a boogie thing. That was a completely different kettle of fish.
That was Boogie being
laning.
Right, was also
to clarify, like Ebby was still getting power shoved in a lot. You saw pretty much all the games aside from game 4, actually, where things like snowballed really quick down to the bot side. DFM were very heavily up in the bot side as well, consisting of a lot of 2v2 kills early on, zoned off tower a lot. But it was Jet on LeBlanc specifically. Jet got LeBlanc twice and got this playoffs. He got wins on it twice. Like, he's really, really, really good at LeBlanc. And part of that is, like, while he wasn't necessarily getting massive CS leads or anything, like 10 or something on the LeBlanc, the big deal was more that his roam timings were just really good. Like, I don't think I've seen a guy use LeBlanc roam timings that well in a very, very long time. Where he would because it was this conversation that Oak was having in the green room with us, where he pointed this out and said, look, it's a difference. Like, people often assume priority means that you've got the lane shoved up, you are actually up in lane, right? Or actually sometimes it is, okay, I've pushed the lane in and now it's going to slow push back to me with a cannon wave, so even if the wave is at my tower, I'm not losing very much because it's a cannon minion, so I get to roam on that timer and make things happen.
Yeah.
And that happened in both series or both matches where they got the head on the LeBlanc really, really heavy. You go watch those push into roams that Jet got off on the LeBlanc. Absolutely amazing.
And a lot of this was actually just like his level 1 trading was really good, just really, really good. And like Yaharong, considering in the Juggernaut match, like he did get solo killed a couple of times. There were some times where Jet kind of showed this. We didn't think it would get like this.
He got solo killed once, I think, wasn't it? It was once on the R.
Sure. Either way, like he was down in lane against Jet in the Juggernaut match a couple of times. It just didn't lead to this stuff, right? Where like he would give up a bit of CS, he would give up a solo kill or whatever. But it was like manageable because in the team fights, Yaharong was still online. Doesn't matter, job's done. It wasn't like awful, right? It was just like, it's a slight lead. It doesn't really matter. In this one, I think Jet really found a real victory in this. But what was really interesting after game 1 is this is the bigger point which I wanted to bring up about NT's Tom Kench, because this was a huge thing. So last year at MSI, Kazu did a couple of Twitter spaces, and I ended up kind of going into chat with him, and he kind of because he's fluent in English as well and French, so he's a very multilingual person. And I chatted with him about why in their loss to Rascal Jesters, I think it was, in the Juggernaut match, what was happening with the first pick Trundle? Why were they doing that? And we had a really interesting conversation about how he just knew against teams like Axis and Rascal Jester from last year, they were always going to play grouped up team fights. And Trundle is really good, at just like punishing people who like those standoff kind of affairs, because when you're playing a load of stuff like Syndra and immobile carries, whatever, you can pick them up quite well. Yeah. And what I infer from that is that he is good at reading what the enemy team will do and drafts according to the enemy team rather than meta. It's a bit of a mix and match, right? Because there are some champions which are stronger, but still you want to take meta champions maybe in different orders. So there were points. So after game 1, DFM were kind of saying, hey, honey, you can take this, like leaving open like the first pick Jinx in game 2. And then particularly in game 3, this was really, really interesting, where DFM banned out the Xayah and first picked the Tom Kench and said, look, you've been winning by, in game 1, Honey having enough self-peel that when we tried to actually take straight up 5v5s, we had a really difficult way to play this, because that's where you are best at playing.
Yeah, despite actually very good TP flanks and stuff, they just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, right? And like the coordination wasn't quite there, and Honey was just as good enough at outplaying to make things work at this level. And you're like,
Paz was also landing some good shock blasts.
Yeah, it was. It's the kind of thing. It's like the clutch sector where you
there was a lot
predict
of
with a ball and he flashes another way, and you're like, if you predict that right, you die and you win the game.
Yeah, but like when Honey's on the Xayah and can play around the Xayah ult, when he has the the Tahm Kench and the Tahm Kench can bail them out. It's like, well, what if you don't
it
have
was-
the
it was- he had
self-heal
a-
tools?
He had a Nautilus in that first game.
Sure, but if you do, but no, this is what I'm saying. Is like
it
when
was
you
the
see
same
when you
peel,
see
yeah.
NT and NT beforehand, when you're saying like when NT has the really powerful Tahm Kench and stuff, and like he
Yes.
looks like a different player when he's on the Tahm Kench. DFM look at that and say, well, what if you don't have the self peel? What if you don't have that? And you look at particularly game 3. I think this is a really interesting draft where Kazuken like has got inside the heads of Sengoku's win conditions and says, what do you do without this? Even though it is a first pick Tahm Kench, it's not meta. I think DFM had a really strong draft for that one. However, what was really interesting after that point is that you think, haha, DFM, best coaches in the region, best team in the region. Well, they lose doing the same thing in game 4. So,
Well,
Sengoku
there's
adapted.
there is something a bit bigger, which was honestly, it harpens back to something I believe they were doing. It was summer playoffs and summer split in general. Remember, the Nocturne came back for steal.
Yep.
Last time we saw that, it was the LeBlanc combo, wasn't it? Or was
That
it?
was
Shaco
yeah, a little
LeBlanc.
like
Shaco LeBlanc. That was the
that was
combo.
the
So we
crazy one
got
they
the
had.
Nocturne comeback. DFM have another combo. Twisted Fate, Nocturne. And that was kind of the other story that was going on for this series, that DFM had figured out a combo, which, I'll be real, Sengoku didn't look prepared for, even throughout this whole series. They figured it out a bit in game number 4. Which...
Like, yeah, I mean, game 4 was a weird one because they actually, that was the one time. In fact, it felt like the one time in like the entirety of players where Sengoku categorically won the early game. Like even against Rascal Jesters, it was at best close. This is the only time I thought, well, damn, they really snowballed.
Was 35 minutes plus.
And that game to me was as much DFM like not cutting their losses, having, you know, basically failed to recall on bot side, had their recalls interrupted and then got dived, and then Yaharong turns up and he dies, and then Ebby takes a bad trade with Paz, and Jet teleport tops and gets a kill onto Ebby as well, and suddenly you've got a 4-0 LeBlanc. And then they just snowball from there. But that is the one game in players I feel like they really, really, really hard won early game and then snowballed from there. And once got on his Graves, and between the Graves and the LeBlanc popping off, getting loads of damage, it was kind of all over. But pretty much every other time, like, I feel like they were either even or pretty heavily behind in the early game. Even in the other game, even in the other game they won, right? Like against DFM, that first game, they were pretty far behind in that first game.
Yeah, and I think in game 4 you're absolutely right. It was just like Sengoku actually just been like, well, what happens if you have this combo but it's not ahead? What happens then, right? Because it's harder to play as reliably around like Nocturne Rise as compared to one of the early games where they had like, was it Nocturne? I was Nocturne Ergon TF when you sat there like, oh heck, so someone's dying real quick here. And they did the same kind of thing with the Camille before. You lock down a single target, you roll through that. And I think that DFM, because again, we've talked about Sengoku in a lot of this. I think that DFM showed a lot of versatility in the way that they were willing to play out back to front comps, then also kind of go towards like more global press R and kill comp. But in this one, they tried to force like the press R and kill heavy dive comp. But a big part of this was probably Paz's best game of the series too. And Ebby on the Akali versus the Sion. They thought that the Graves was going into top lane, I imagine, and they picked the Akali as kind of like the hey, Graves
I was
actually...
even saying that on broadcast. Like,
yeah,
that was the logical...
It was, and then you kind of sat there, it's like, yeah, but once plays Graves jungle, and they flex it into jungle, and it's the Sion top, and I was like, oh heck, this is kind of annoying now. And then Ebby doesn't have the same room for maneuver, and then Jet monsters lane. Like, there's points where like he's dodging out 2 or 3 Rise Qs in one combo. Yaharong's forced under turret. He goes top lane, picks up a kill under turret, and then you think, oh heck, this guy's going to get worse and worse to deal with. And then suddenly, Paz is not down in lane. He's on a front line that can really deal with the enemy team, and he's playing a Sion at that point. Jet has no immediate CC to be worried about, because it's not like you're against a Nautilus or a Leona. Like there's a
it's very hard to deal with this LeBlanc.
And that's kind of it. So Jet gets to pop off. Paz is actually stopping the dive combo being that meaningful because he's like a blocker between like the Jinx and the Rise. And like Akali and Nocturne have to get all of the work done in that game. And they can't because they're that far behind. So Sengoku, like you were saying, they ran over the early game. It's through multiple things of
I mean, that bot dive was massive.
For sure. There were so many things which went well for them. And oh yeah, because Yaharong, I just remember that.
That
Realm Orbs in and doubles down on a losing play.
Yeah, they try to outplay it, and then it's like that was like at DFM commit to that. Yeah. I mean, like the Jet gets like triple kill off that, but not good for everybody involved. And like,
I
what do you got for me, Lexi?
I want to know if this was maybe the stupid spot where actually Akali should have been mid and Rice should have been top.
Maybe.
I think your top at match is still fucking horrible when once just shows up. But
yeah, I feel like
don't know.
event
I
you hit
mean-
6, Sion ults you and you die horrible.
So like
Yeah.
the thing was, Ebby was
Pray for
actually
Realm Warp.
Ebby was doing really well in lane until he basically misses Paz's recall, gets hit with a decimating
That's
smash,
right.
and tries to recall under turret, then can't because basically Jet wants roam up, and you end up with this really close scenario where Ebby and Jet have a really close mechanical duel, and Ebby can't quite break the tether to get under his tier 2, trying to
Yeah.
escape, and suddenly he loses about 2 waves. He's burned Ignite,
used his
burned his
ult.
teleport. You know, he's burnt, and basically suddenly even the Akali, which was ahead, has lost it, and then Paz is unkillable. And Jet gets another kill, and once is invaded and taken out a whole quadrant of the jungle. So like you've lost vision control, you've lost topside pressure, you've lost.
What's really important about this is like if we remember like the start of the Juggernaut match with DFM, we're like, let's put all our resources bot side, shut down Honey, and top will just succeed. Sengoku managed to like actually win an arm wrestle well enough that DFM like, well, we gotta go top side, and it doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work well enough for them.
They picked themselves into that spot, and congratulations to Sengoku for actually kind of tricking DFM into thinking, oh yeah, it must be Graves top, and then going, ha, and then throw. The Scion was the perfect pick there.
It was,
I actually
and it's a
can't
Paz
think of a
special, it's a
better
Paz
pick
special.
in that spot, and the fact that Paz is also very proficient. The only other things you could have put in that kind of spot would be like a Cho'Gath or obviously the LJL special Urgot, because you always got to bring an Urgot randomly.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, like, also, I can't say it enough though. Part of this is just the fact it's a combination of Jet and LeBlanc. Like, he's just very, very good at this champion. He knows how to roam with this champion super well, and clearly Sengoku are very comfortable with playing around early skirmishes with the champion. Jet looked significantly less comfortable on the Ahri. Like, he was late to a lot of plays where Yaharong just was everywhere on the TF.
I mean, I think like it's for me the way I'd phrase it is just like he looked exceptionally clean on LeBlanc.
Yes,
like that was just a pick of like holy crap,
this
thing's pretty nasty. And
oh yeah, see that's what I've been figuring out.
I don't know. Like we only saw two games of his LeBlanc in this.
So we are going to have a conversation about this. So like we're probably we're gearing up to do dedicated MSI stuff, and this is more like a recap of like the whole split, right? But I think that one thing which I was saying kind of more and more as playoffs went on, because you could just kind of see it, right, is that the top end of our mid lane pool isn't just one player; it's multiple players. You've got like Yaharong, you've got Jet. Dice is actually pretty damn good too. Dash is still performing well, but like you look at Jet and Yaharong, and they pushed each other really hard in this series, like really hard. I actually think that I don't think there has been a point where mid lane has been as strong in the LJL as it has now. I think that's actually quite easy to say for me, actually. As much as I look at like Spring 2020, we had like Seros, Pyrion. No, Dash wasn't actually there at that point, but we had like Arya in there as well. Like there was a point where we were sat there thinking, that's a hell of a lot of good players around. This is still stronger than that. And I think that when you have these players that can push you in laning phase and teach you as a team to learn what happens when you are against excellent laners, which DFM had some issues with when they did go international like last year. I think that not that they didn't have ways to overcome that, but you could see they weren't as comfortable when, of course, they weren't playing around loads of early winning lanes. Duh, it's harder to play when you don't have that. I think that this was a really important learning experience for DFM to what happens when you don't have mid pro, and I think that Jet was a big thorn in their side.
But Jet was not on the Victor side, and as such, how we always do our player of the series has to be a winning player. While we do sometimes do our fun ones where I remember years ago I said Seros was actually the best player, but he wasn't actually the best mid. We're not going to go back and do that.
The one time we've done that was Art versus CJ in that Spring 2020 series. That's the one time. Art was a losing MVP.
Oh, he was so close.
He was so good.
I miss Art. But the player that ultimately got the MVP is a player we haven't really talked too much about. And this is why we've done this. It's like we planned this a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. It was Unipon was our player of the series. Yay. Every game they won, he didn't die. And it kind of felt like that's kind of what DFM were asking him to do. That was the cracked part. Harp, though, as well, played phenomenally throughout this series, and really kind of allowed Utapon to thrive so well, especially against, well, what ended up turning out to being the second best bot lane in the LJL. All things said and done, Honey and NT really pushed Soul and Secret, and Soul and Secret pushed them. They were able to get through, and Utapon and Harp got pushed as well. But at the end of the day, Utapon is still cracked.
He's very consistent. He's
so
Mr.
good.
Consistent. He's still Mr. Consistent. I don't know how he does it after all this time. He's just incredible.
I feel like Mr. Consistent undersells him as well, because Mr. Consistent seems like he's like all reliable, just plodding along, doing his thing. He's like, if your consistency is like that level, it's like, yes, my Mr.
He's
Consistent.
Mr. Excellent.
I am an Aston Martin DB9, and I am consistently crushing kids. Like, he's so good. Like, I think again, this season in particular, he and Harp have been very not just surviving, you know what I mean? Where Utapon would be quiet in the early game, farm up just fine, and then turn up team fights doing really well because they were focusing top side, whatever. And you can still do that occasionally when you occasionally see some of the top or mid side focus strats. But when they've needed to, like, they're getting like level 1 double kill spot. They are, playing the Jinx, they're playing the Aphelios, they're playing the Misfortune, they're playing, like all of this stuff, the Ezreal and the rest of it, and looking so damn good. And you can see, like, I think Joshi said it when we did a little clip. We called it the movement against Paz.
Hey, I said that.
Yeah, it was you, exactly. And it was like, it was that
he
last
was the one
game.
that said it first, but like,
yeah,
made the point. But
yes, but where basically Paz was on this Scion and Utapon just dances around him. This guy is so good at just positioning in team fights. It's amazing to see.
I wonder where the ceiling is for some of these players on DFM.
Yep.
And every single time we keep asking it, I'm like, Ebby's gotten better this split. Steel, I would argue, has gotten better this split. Utapon has gotten better this split. Lads, this team has gotten better than the super team that was last year. Now, I don't know, and that's a conversation for another podcast around Yaharong and Harp. But just talking about the Japanese players or the Japanese resident that is Steel, I am so impressed with those three players.
I think, because again, I know a lot of people will be tuning into this for like tidbits on MSI, and we're not going to leave you starving. We're not going to this is the appetizer. We're not going to go into everything in depth here, but like, they're going to MSI. They're walking away from there. And people will remember MSI of last year with like the DFM Crabber, like the C9 Crabber versus DFM.
I'm sorry,
stuff
still
like
the
that.
best meme from LCS over the last year.
Oh, it's absolutely hilarious. And so I've actually, I think we should start phrasing it as like Crabber's like deadliest catch. It's just like a TV documentary.
Oh my god, we've got to get Chris.
The deadliest catch.
So I mentioned this when I was on fucking Summoning Insight last as well. I was like, God damn it, we've missed a real sitter here. But I think that you look at, as Lexi saying, I think Ebby is having his best split ever. He's had a bigger champion pool than he ever was. And you think how good he was internationally last year on a select few champions. Now he's doing that on more. I think Steel is also probably having one of his best splits ever in terms of peak level. Has he been uncontested? No. I think that he is dealing with losing lanes better than he did last year, which was something that he was criticized for. And I think that's something which is very important. I think that Utapon is still Utapon. He's fucking great. Like, even the stalwarts of DFM are performing probably better than they were last year. Now, MSI of last year, they were playing with Kazu in as a support role, right? Stand-in coach. Yeah. So this is still like, we're not comparing this team to MSI of last year DFM. We're comparing this to like World's Group Stage DFM of last year, like the Exodia. And we are now questioning whether they are outright better than them. And that's really cool for us as fans of the region. We will go into more reasons why they may or may not succeed at MSI, but like the hype is there and it's reasonable to have that hype.
Sam, me and Alex have just gushed about DFM. We need to hear your MSI gush taster.
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Give him a morsel.
there are a couple of things to keep in mind here when you are looking at this team. So we've already covered the Kazu point, right? That was Kazu playing at MSI, and we still saw some pretty extraordinary things out of this team. Go look at that game where Khan was solo killed multiple times with his gang plan by Ebby on the Akali, where he was pulling off some incredible stuff, right? And then you think that Ebby is playing significantly more versatile, significantly better, I feel, than he has in a very long time, if ever. You're looking at a mid laner who feels pretty versatile and a lot more self-sufficient than Arya, who often demanded a lot of resources. When you're seeing Udapon and Hart being significantly more aggressive in lane, a lot more dominant lane, you start to think, well, this is a team that seems to have more ways of playing, more champions to play those ways with, and potentially higher mechanical ceilings. That should make you pretty excited, assuming they can bring that level at an international tournament. And the question is, who are they then playing against, and what is their level? Because I feel that, say, C9 took a little while to come online and were pretty inconsistent. And Damwon sometimes had players like Khan who were sometimes amazing and sometimes could throw a little.
Yeah,
right?
So two things.
If you are playing against T1, if you're playing against, top esports, things get a little bit trickier potentially. But I think you should be very excited to see what DFM can do, especially considering the level they seem to be bringing right now. And that should be pretty goddamn exciting.
Okay, first thing, I think that Arya looked best when he was left to succeed on his own. I think that actually when they started winning in play-ins of Worlds, it was when they played away from Arya and they'd stabilize the rest of the map. That was how they beat DFM in the C9 in that second matchup in play-ins, actually. And they lost when they played towards him early on, because the rest of the lane started falling apart.
But that was against Perks.
It was against Perks. And the thing is that when he was on his own, he did fine. He did absolutely fine.
I disagree. He got
smashed.
That
was how they won. That was how they won the tiebreaker.
Well, they got him out of lane and started roaming with him.
All right, next episode. We'll do this conversation in next episode. Okay. I'm putting
I think that's revisionary. But then the other thing is in terms of I think I very much agree in terms of the talk about how many styles of play they have, because coming into Worlds last year, we kind of said, oh, they can play bot side because Utah is XYZ player. The fact that they've shown all of this multiple times against what we assume to be high-level opponents is actually very, very cool. And the problem is, you've got teams like G2 who are very good in the early game where DFM maybe don't have as much strength. T1 who are just going to brutally outlane you and then outskirmish you, and then the LPL. I don't know if the international teams are going to allow the same level of upset coming forwards, but still, there are points to be questioned here. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just made a note of the pin in of Arya, so we are not going to do that conversation. We will do that next episode. Okay, so we'll come back. Our experts will come at this, and I'll be maybe we'll try and get a graphic for you two to debate, and I'll be the moderator. Maybe we should do that for a quick segment. That sounds like content. Also good for a Clips channel, which if you're interested in, ladies and gentlemen, we might do. Who knows?
We'll see.
Anyway, with that said, I think that pretty much ends us out for the time being, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this podcast, make sure to like us on iTunes, follow us on 5 stars, ask us questions, because, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some podcast questions to go over. Mr. Middlecott is asking us, are there any examples of players that if they swapped teams going into summer, it would be an upgrade for both teams? I don't know why I gave him my Tannoy announcer voice for that one.
It's because, as he understands, he's actually a landlord these days, and that's a reference only he will understand, and that's actually his real social class right now. Okay,
that's a really hard.
Let me go get the rosters up so I can. Let me go get the.
I'm doing that now. So put it this way, I mean, I don't think there's any way that DFM switches anyone in or out of that team with making both teams better, because the only one that's better than Yahoo.
I think you've got to look towards Axis, V3, Fukuoka, SoftBank, Hawks.
Yeah,
that's where
look at people on the same kind of level, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, those 3 teams were basically identical. It just so happens that Hawks figured it out at the very end. We could have had a world where Axis were in the playoffs over Hawks, remember? That was a very real possibility going into the last podcast episode, except for we had already seen that was already not going to be a thing. I'm stalling for time here.
I've got one for you.
I think Sang-Chu would be an upgrade over Yuhi, but that's
would that make teams both better? Because make both teams better.
Oh yeah, actually, it doesn't make.
So here's my take. I've got one. I think potentially this is just like, so you'll have to understand that this might not work. But if there was one that might work, I wonder whether Ray Farkey for Nap might be an interesting choice, because Burning Core, one of their weaknesses right now is just a little bit of volatility. In effect, if you have a little bit more of a stable presence in topside, Flawless can continue to be a bit more aggressive and have Nap be more stable than Ray Farkey. You can still play through dice. And CGA, part of their issue is they almost need another playmaker who isn't Cassin and Nemo, right? And I feel Ray Farkey might provide that for them. And he might draw a bit of pressure away from Hybrid because he can play nut stuff topside to open up Hybrid. It's not a guaranteed upgrade, but I wonder whether that might help some of their play patterns.
So
that would
that
be
was
my,
really-
at least off the top of my head.
I actually have a similar logic. I actually wonder if Blank and Cassin changing
Ah,
might
that's
work out
interesting
both
one.
ways.
I like
Yeah,
both
I
of
see
these
it.
that
Because
you've
I mean,
suggested.
it's that one is basically just said like, well, I hope they have a honeymoon phase and they understand how to play around each other. Because Blank, like, he has a very, I think that CGA, because they do nothing in the, like, it is basically just Cassin doing stuff in the early game, for CGA. I feel like Blank wouldn't have any issues kind of performing that same kind of role to a different kind of degree. I think there's a chance that works out. And then Cassin kind of going to the Hawks. Look, I don't know. I just feel like that one, just on a vibe, I feel like Blank Cassin switching might work out just in terms of both teams conceptually kind of like adapting to new junglers. Maybe that'll work out for them. But it's really hard to answer this question. That's about the closest I've got.
Can I just have Cog back over like Washi Day or something? Like, can I
Yeah,
just say
okay.
stupid things
Yeah,
like that? Like, no. All right, let's go on to the next question because I can't come up with another one. Because I think honestly, I think the Ray Farkey Nat one is the best one. I like the vibe check of the Cassin and Blank. Cassin rather and Blank. I think that's a decent pull. I can't think of anywhere else where I think it does anything. So with that said, Monsieur Oak has asked us, if every team retains every player, what team could potentially upset current standings? Bonus points if you talk about about teams other than SHG. So, if every team retains every player, what team potentially could upset the current standings?
Burning Core.
They're volatile enough, and you can see the top end of this team. They're like,
roll the dice.
Because Flawless and Dice are actually really, really good. And if Ray Farkey pops off on something, he's like, they've got options. Like,
I think
that
Burning
team
Core are
is pretty
genuinely a
good.
pretty good team. Like, I do think that. I mean, Yuki is stable for now. He's not a top AD carry. He's like, he's okay right now.
He's
but yeah.
7th in the whole league for me, and that's
yeah,
not disrespect. It's actually just
No, we have a lot of
our
good AD
bot lane
carries.
is that
Like,
cracked. Yes,
you could
I
put a
have
lot
to
of
add that point.
I'll also say, like, not to give Middlecott hope or encourage him in any way, because why would anybody do that?
Don't say it.
CGA.
Oh no,
He said it.
Could upset some standings, because I feel that Hybrid is actually very good again.
Okay,
and
I'm gonna
Cassin
bring
and
this
Nemo,
up.
like if they have a good run in playoffs where Cassin and Nemo actually hit the coin flip, they could do something.
You know what?
Again, I like if you're looking for a team, if you need them to be more consistent, and another split gives them more consistency, and they're able to enable the likes of Hybrid and Nap. That's
you know what? I'm gonna go a little bit spicy because I think if they can figure out their top lane scenario, and this is a big if they can figure out the top lane scenario, I think Axis could do it, lads.
Wait,
I'm genuinely on that hopium.
I mean, Sangchu and Swamp are good. I grant you that.
Yeah,
I just don't think they have a top lane.
I think they could be a facilitator. I think Dicey looked fine in a lot of spots. It's they need to figure out their top lane.
I mean, just bring back Cog. Just bring Cog back.
I mean, he's
league.
the perfect spot
yeah,
there.
But that's a real sitter.
Question said I had to keep.
That's what I say. Together. Like, I mean, that's the hard one, right? Because like, I feel like it's much easier to say like V3 or Axes, just bring back Cog, see what happens. But yeah, I think that for me,
I hope they do that.
I think it's Burning Core and CG are volatile. I think that Burning Core are the more proficient one at being volatile currently.
And side note, I have not got much hopium going for Hawks at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. They are no super team, and I don't think they'll be top 3. Is a statement I'm putting out there in its current roster. current roster.
We'll see. They don't seem to be particular. The synergy doesn't seem to be there, at least as far as we can see.
No, it really doesn't seem to be. Though, gentlemen, with those questions answered, that is going to be the end of the podcast. We have done another episode. I don't know what number we're on at the moment. I'll find out. Not 100, so we don't have to worry. We're still like 10 off, so we're fine. It'll be summer split. It'll be summer split. We got time. We got time. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and or watching. Initialize. What are you going to be doing over this next week or two that you can plug and say and play so people know where to find you? Sam.
I missed that.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm doing.
Alex, you do it then. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I got a message. I got a message that distracted me briefly.
I'm going to be doing E-Masters. I'm going to be streaming, and then I'm going to be catching up on sleep. That's what I'm doing. Catch me there.
Oh, lovely. At Nymera.
Yes, there will be lots of European Masters. I am Nymera's older brother, so I'll take that. That's fair. Yeah, but lots of E-Masters, lots of flat viewings. Likely.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to the dentist as well. But that's like life stuff. You don't need to know that.
Yeah, like life stuff, plus EU Masters, plus probably some MSI prep, let's be real.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the main things in my life, and I need to find a new video game because I finished Elden Ring today. So what am I going to do with myself in my spare time? I'm lost. That would involve having spare time, I grant you.
Yeah, that is kind of part of it. Mate, go get gold. No? All right. Your silence speaks volumes. For me, this week...
Okay, to clarify, I would need functional internet to do that. And I refuse to play when I can't, where I drop out of every third game because of the internet like that. That sounds like a way to lose LP in very quick order.
Yeah, probably. That's fair. That's fair. For me, it's going to be my birthday this week, so that's kind of hype.
Oh, damn!
I don't know really what I'm gonna be doing, but it's a birthday. Other than that, just follow my Twitter. I might have some stuff coming out. I don't know. I've been working on a bunch of D&D maps because I got really into this new tool called Dungeon Alchemist.
I know it. Yeah.
Pre-make stuff, and then you can go in and modify it. I have almost made the full map of Fandelver. So, for better or for worse, artistic interpretation, obviously, because there's no official map. It's just an artwork piece. But yeah, my computer is not happy about it because I'm really pushing that tool to its absolute max at the moment. It's meant for little small scale maps and dungeons, and I'm like, what about if I make a whole village and more? And there are like bathhouses, and everyone has a toilet, and I've gone wild with this. It's full Sims.
Go plumbing.
But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we've just said, like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you find us over on iTunes. You can catch this podcast wherever you get your podcasty means. And with that said, thank you so much for listening and watching. And we will see you very, very soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.